Hello, this is a follow-up lecture on active voice and passive voice. The techniques which I mentioned in my previous video on active voice and passive voice will be applied while changing these examples from active voice to passive voice or vice versa. So let's get started with the first example. The first sentence is they had not lifted the restrictions. So you can see that the subject in this sentence is active and we don't have the structure which I mentioned is required for passive voice, be plus third form of verb. So this is an active voice sentence. Now I will change this sentence into passive voice. The first rule is that the positions of the subject and object will be exchanged. So the restrictions now, as I said that we will have to use any form of the be according to this verb. So this is a third form of verb, and for third form of verb I mentioned that we will be required to use been. And as it is a negative sentence, so not will be constant. And left it is already third form of verb, so we will use it here. Next example is the thief has been arrested. So here you can see that the thief is not agent, it is not performing the action, rather an action is done to it, and we have the structure of passive voice. So this sentence is a passive voice. Now you can see that we don't have agent mentioned in this sentence, and this is where we use passive voice when we don't know about the agent of the action, when or we don't want to mention it, or it is not important, whatever. But in cases where we are not supposed to use the agent of an action, we use passive voice structure. So this is the passive. Now while changing such sentences where we don't have the agent mentioned, we can put the agent or we can suppose the agent. As here it is understood that this action is done by the police. So now changing this sentence into this passive sentence into active is easy. We can say that the positions will be exchanged. The police. Now here we have has, but with the police we are required to use a plural verb, and it has been. So if we have been, it means that the active verb, that the verb in the active sentence should be third form of verb. And the thief, here the position will get changed. Next example is English is spoken all over the world. English not agent but patient, not performing action, rather receiving the action. And we have the passive structure, be plus third form of verb. And same here, we don't have the agent mentioned, but the agent is understood by people. So now changing it is easy, people. And as here the first form of be is used, so as I mentioned that if we have the first form of be in the passive voice and its active counterpart, the main verb is first form. Now positions are changed all over the world, constant. Let's take care of the next example. Haven't the students been struck off? First, the subject is passive, not active, and we have the passive structure. So the sentence is in passive voice. While changing a sentence into active or passive, we first of all should know about whether the sentence is active or passive. So this is passive. Now the position will be entered, but again here we don't have the agent mentioned, but it is understood by the teacher or by teacher, because this action is usually done by the teacher. Now we have here used haven't, but as the teacher is singular, so we will use hasn't. Hasn't the teacher, and as a this is been, not being, sorry for the mistake. Now as this is because have is already followed by, have is always followed by been, and been is third form of verb. So now we have the structure. Hasn't the student been constant? We are not required to use been in active voice. This is passive voice, therefore we have used been, but here we are not required to use it. Hasn't the teacher struck off the students? This is a bit technical, this example. Let me discuss it again. Haven't the students been struck off? This is not been, this is been, because after have we always use been, which is third form of verb. First, this is a passive voice because of the structure been plus third form of verb, one form of be plus followed by third form of verb, and the subject is patient, receiving an action, not performing an action. Now while changing this sentence, the formula is the same, that first we will consider or suppose the agent, and the agent here is the teacher. Now with the teacher we don't use haven't but hasn't, because the students are plural but the teacher is singular. Struck up, it is third form of verb, is a, and the passive voice we have been, third form of the be, so in its active counterpart we will have to use the third form of the main verb. And it can also be understood that has is always followed by third form of verb like have, and the positions are exchanged, so we have the students here. Now let's take care of the next example. Are the points being noted? First, the subject is patient, passive, receiving action, not performing the action. Being plus third form of verb, so it is passive. Again we have to consider the agent by student, suppose. Now are the students, is R will remain constant as the students is plural like points, and as this is a continuous form of be, so it means that the main form, the form of the main verb in the active voice should be continuous form, and the positions are in change. Next, take care of your health. The structure is not a passive voice, rather active voice, and as we can see that it is an imperative sentence giving a command, advice, suggestion. So the formula for this was simple: let plus object, which is your health, N plus B, taken care, and of will be used at the end. These are the examples which I have solved or changed through the rules I mentioned in the previous video. Now sometime we have got get first form, got second form instead of the be plus third form of verb in passive. Now you can see in this example, our car got stolen last night. Here we have third form of verb preceded by got, not preceded by any form of the be, and the subject is passive, patient. So this is usually called get passive. While changing these kind of sentences, the formula is the same. We have to consider the agent by someone, suppose someone, and is got a second form, so we have to use second form of the main verb in its active counterpart. Someone stole our car last night. This is another sentence I will analyze. Is this is a different construction or different structure of passive voice. The house sold in 4 days. You can see that in this sentence the subject is patient, not performing an action, rather receiving an action. So this is a passive voice, but you can see that the structure is not of passive voice. We have third form of verb but not preceded by any form of be. So if we have the patient, the subject of the sentence patient but not the structure of passive voice, the complete structure of passive voice, such construction are called mediopassive. Such construction are called mediopassive, and other rules are the same for changing. We can say that the house sold in 4 days, we can say by the owner, we can consider it. So if we have second form of verb, we can say the owner sold. Second form of verb, the house in 4 days. You can see here now the subject is active, performing an action, and we have second form of verb, but here we don't have the form of be, any form of be. This is because this is one of the structure mediopassive. Same as the case with this one. The window has broken. Now the window is not performing action, rather receiving an action. So it is patient, but the structure is not a passive voice. So we can also write this into active voice, that suppose the boy has broken the window. Here the subject is passive, patient, receiving an action, but the structure is not we don't have the complete structure of passive voice, be plus third form of verb. And here in active counterpart we have the subject is agent. Apart from these, there are some examples which I will just explain. She is known to me. You can see that the structure is that of passive voice, but here are many technicalities which I will explain in my next lecture on past participle. What is the role of this third form of verb, which is past participle, and this bond, which is also past participle. These past participle perform different actions. So these sentences are not passive voice, rather there is different technique or different strategies to explain these two sentences, which I will do in my next lecture.